Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This is The Ordinary Awesome, and I'm your host, O'Brien. This is part two of a two-part video series we're doing on toxic friends. In the first part, we learned how to identify toxic friends through 10 toxic friend avatars. And in part two, we're going to go through what's called resolution solution. So in resolution solution, we are going to see what you're going to do. So the first thing we're going to talk about is decide. We're going to decide if you're going to get rid of the friends or keep the friends. If you decide to get rid of them, well, then you get rid of them, obviously. How you do that, it's up to you. But I would say bow out gracefully, because people do change in time and they might come back around again some other time in your life, and they might be at a different position for you to be able to deal with them. And if they're co-workers, then you might have to keep them uh, because you work with them all the time. And if you do decide to keep them, this is going to require some work. It's going to require that you move into your higher self. And what I mean by higher self is you move into a state of understanding, compassion, and extreme patience, I would say, because when you're in that state of higher self, you can move out of the state of non-reactive judgment, or move into, I'm sorry, the state of non-reactive judgment. Because as it is now, you're probably justfully so reacting to how they are to you in the first place. If they're judging you, or if they're dismissive to you, or whatever, you're going to be reactive because you are human. So when you move into your higher self, you can get into a state of non-reactive judgment, and you can look at them as what's called an objective observer. An objective observer just puts you in a state to look at them and understand that nobody truly wants to be like that. However they are, if they're the stepmom, if they're the mayor, the fake mayor, or if they're the judge or the crusher, which we talked about in part two. If you haven't seen that, in part one, you should go and watch that first before you see this. So the objective observer sees that no one wants to truly be like that. And then you can picture what was their emotional heritage like. And what I mean by emotional heritage is, think about the way they were raised. Maybe they were in a bad household, or maybe something changed in their life. They're going through a trying emotional time, or something that they don't feel they're worthy enough to actually tell you about, but it manifests itself in them being a judge or a crusher or any of the number of avatars that we discussed in part one. Okay, so now that you even consider the emotional heritage, which is actually a good thing, because it puts you into a different mind state to know that they basically are running around with the souls of a wounded child. So that helps you to deal with them more with enough patience to hopefully resolve the situation. So that alone gives you a leg up. And next thing we're going to talk about is what we call vibes or vibrations. And I mean a vibrational state of emotional awareness and emotional being. So as we know, the great inventor Nikola Tesla referred to three things as being the secret of the universe, and that was energy, frequency, and vibration. And he believed that everything has its own energy and vibrates at its own unique frequency. And given the human condition, we're able to move into different frequencies basically at will, especially once we're aware of it and how to do it. But the higher states of frequencies consist of love, compassion, gratitude, empathy, and so forth and so on. When you're in that higher state, you can display these things, you understand them, and it gives you a better understanding of other people because you understand yourself. And you can really do anything once you understand the environment of self. Some of the lower vibrations are hate, jealousy, self-loathing, and there's a few others, agitated states, and attitude and stuff like that. And when people actually are in this lower state, they're really in what's called a state of survival, which is number three here. And a survival state, it's more than just emotional. Emotions are the manifestation and results of them being in the survival state chemically in their body. Now, when you're in the survival state, you're working on what's called the sympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system is responsible for the fight or flight response, which you've probably heard about 10,000 years ago, you being chased by a saber-toothed tiger rather. You don't think, you hustle, you run and jump into the cave, and then once you're safe, a little while later, your body goes back to homeostasis or calm as if the event didn't happen. But in our modern society, our stresses are all the time of how we perceive them. We perceive survival differently than life and death. Even though that can be the case, we see it as we have bills to pay, we have rent due, we have to go to work, our boss is driving us crazy, we have car insurance, health insurance, somebody's sick. So whereas 10,000 years ago, you would have moved out of that state once you're in the cave in safety and move back to homeostasis, we stay in that environment all too often. Up to 70% of our days actually we're in a state of survival, new science has showed. So that gets into, it weakens our immune system. It shuts it down, actually. We can't think clearly. We don't know what's going on. We're agitated. So these people who were in this lower vibrational state and they moved into a state of survival, that's why they act like that. That's why the ego comes in, because it's all about saving themselves. Me, 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 me. Now, they're not saving themselves from a saber-toothed tiger, but they are from their emotional damage that they had in whatever occurred in their life or a situation. So it comes off as grandiose, braggadocious, an idiot, a person that's short with you, doesn't give the attention that you deserve as a friend. So also what happens during that state is the brain actually moves into what's called high beta. Now, high beta brain waves is when your brain reacts to the sympathetic nervous system, which kicks up all the hormones in your body. And hypothalamus in the brain is like the command center of the brain, and it tells the adrenal glands to start secreting adrenaline. So that's why you may have seen your friends when they're, it's all about me. Look what I'm doing. Blah, blah, blah. You might see them in a hyper state, and even if they don't speak so rapidly, their brains are functioning in a high beta state. And high beta puts you into more of an analytical state, which means they're not compassionate, they're not caring, they're not understanding, they're not creative, they're not listening to you, in other words. So that's why you may talk to them and they're like, oh yeah, right, 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 look what I'm doing, look what I'm doing. So that is what we get into in the high beta brain waves. Now, there are ways of bringing that back to normal, or homeostasis, balance, or rest, if you want to call it, by going into alpha brain waves. And that's just calming down and relaxing and deep breaths and focusing on the present, which you can apply, which I'll talk a little bit about that in here. So once you know this about the people, it gives you a better state of thinking about them, like I said before, the soul of a wounded child. And if you really want to help them, you can move toward it with having all of this in mind. So now we get down to doing the work. And this is, it's going to require, first and foremost, a lot of patience, because it took them usually a long time to get like that. Or even if they were okay in blocks of times in their lives, they refer back to that emotional damaging state that put them there in the first place. And it can come up at any time. And the way that remembering it works is the emotions are just a snapshot of that exact moment of whatever caused them that trauma, be it abuse, physical, mental, or whatever. So when they relive it, something triggers it, your body produces the exact same chemicals as if the event just happened. So they're reliving that multiple times a day when they rethink it. It could be 100 times a day. So imagine if you went through a traumatic experience 10 years ago, but you think about it every day, 10 times a day. That literally means you had that traumatic experience 10 times that day in the chemical expression in your body, which manifests in the physical and the emotional. So patience is important for that. Next, we move into pillars of positivity, which is what you could try to do to begin to fix things with your friend. And what I mean by that is try to really, really stay positive. And when you know you want to hang out with them to kind of have that talk, be in an upbeat mode. Don't start off the conversation like, hey man, what's going on? We need to talk. Meet me tonight. Already, it's going to trigger their self-survival mechanisms because they feel like they're being attacked, even though you may not, and you really wanted to discuss things and help them. How their mind perceives it is it's a threat, which reactivates this whole survival state all over again. So when they come and meet you, they're going to be in that high beta state, and nothing's going to work. They're not going to hear you. They're going to be upset. If you give them constructive criticism, they see it as an attack on self because the ego's running the show. So be positive and say, hey, you want to hang out tonight, as if nothing happened. Um, and go to what I mean by safe space. I mean, don't go out with a whole group of friends if you want to discuss personal issues that you have with that one friend. A lot of people feel they may need to have the group to back them up. Yeah, you do this, right? Doesn't he do this? Doesn't she do that? That's the worst thing you could do, because once again, you're coming from multiple angles of attack, which is going to shut them down, set them off, and you'll accomplish nothing. And if you really want to work at this, don't do that at all. Go somewhere by yourself where you know you have time. Make sure that it's a block of time that you both have time for, that they don't just tell you their braggadocious things or say their comments and they're out. I gotta go. I'm out of here. Make sure there's time so they can sit down and discuss this. And don't get too heavy at first. Try to keep it light. And that moves into the next thing I call let them roll. And what I mean by that is, if they're the friend that always talks about themselves or what's going on with them, let them do it. Just sit there and quiet, because you know all of this now. You have your higher self with you. You're not by yourself. You don't need your friends. So now just keep thinking wounded soul of a child when they talk. Let them talk. It may be 20 minutes, it may be half an hour. Let them go through their thing, because that way they feel that they're heard, and subconsciously somebody cares enough at least to listen, even though you might have felt it being a little over the top. So listen to them with that. And then after that dies down, which it will, because usually people don't keep up that level of energy for a while, and you might have to take your shot if they do, slowly, and start really asking personal questions. If it's the braggart, oh, I got a new car, I got this, guess what happened to me in my job? Or if it's something bad, oh, it's always me if they're the victim. Simply switch into asking them questions, personal questions, really, like, how are you feeling today? Not about the car, not about what the bag they bought, not about what they did, but really, how are you? And they might look at you in shock because they're not used to somebody truly caring. So that might trigger a little bit of defense, and just, it might throw them off their game. But stick with it and really ask, how are you doing? Or if you know their grandmother's sick, or say, how's your grandma? How's everything going with her? Because once again, that calms them down subconsciously and puts them more into an alpha brainwave state and out of the beta brainwave state, so they can relax a little bit more. So after you do the personal questions, I would show vulnerability. And what I mean by that is, tell them something you may not have had a chance to tell them before because they never listened. Tell them something that's going on in your life, like, oh man, my boss, I don't know if I'll get that promotion, or I'm not feeling well, I'm kind of sad, or whatever it may be, because a lot of times people will move into what they see. In other words, if you show them vulnerability, they subconsciously feel safe enough to show you some of theirs. So, and that gets into something in the human brain called mirror neurons. And I'm going to get into that in future episodes. But it's basically what they see, you copy just by being around it. Like an example is, if you've been with somebody and they start yawning, even though you didn't feel tired, you start yawning. It starts with the mirror neurons in the brain. So maybe we can get some of those going in. So showing vulnerability might help them open up. And then after you do that and things kind of settle, you might have your appetizers by then. I don't know. You might be eating or something, or drinking. But anyway, at that point, I would tell them how you really feel. Now, weigh it out. You might not have to dump the whole story on them about, oh, last Tuesday you did this. March 24th, 2005, you did this. You don't have to have a litany, a list that goes on and on and on. Because once again, that attacks, as they perceive it, their ego, and they shrink in and feel small, which is going to make them either get aggravated or leave, or get nasty and not want to hear it. So I would just tell them, like, hey, look, man, we've been friends for a while, and I think you must have been friends for a long time, because anybody that's acting like this in a new friendship, you would tend not to be friends with in the first place. So then you got to understand what brought them to this place, and something may have happened. But anyway, I would tell them, this is, it seems like every time we talk, I don't know if you're really hearing me. I always want to hear about what you're doing, but it seems like what I say doesn't matter. You don't really care. You cut me off, or no matter what I do is not good enough, or my friends, or whatever it may be. I would stick to probably like one general issue of how it makes you feel rather than pulling out the list. You can go through those later if and when it comes up. So after you tell them that, give them time to let it sink in. They might not know what to say. They might be completely caught off guard. And usually the first reaction a lot of times is, I don't do that. Really? I don't do that. Because it's not that they're not acknowledging you. They really don't see past their nose during survival. And they're bragging, they're annoying you, they're judging you. All of that is survival. And when that's going on, once again, like I said, they don't have clarity in the sense of what they're doing to you. It's all about what's going on within side of them coming out as those attitudes and behaviors. So if they do react like that, let it sink and tell them you're not attacking them. I'm just saying, this is how I feel. And then if you start showing signs of agitation, really just change the subject, because now you planted the seed. They're going to have that in their head. You know what I mean? They have it with them. So just do it not at the very end of the night to where it leaves off on that. We want to leave off on a positive note, or kind of like the sandwich method that somebody told me about, which is to say you give a compliment or say something nice, then you give them the information that they don't want to hear but need to hear, then you leave them with something nice. So it sets up their subconscious to at least have the framework of the last feeling, emotion left off from the night was nice. Because oftentimes we might not remember a person's name or exact situation, something that happened 10 years ago or yesterday, but you will remember how it made you feel. The kid in fourth grade who kicked your chair and made you hit your head and embarrassed you in front of everybody, you might not remember his name, but you know how it made you feel. So it's the same way with that at the end of the night. And if they do start to present themselves as agitated or attitude, just like I said, change the subject, talk about the food, talk about anything, and you'll build from that point. But you did lay the groundwork. And if they go the other way and say, oh man, I didn't realize I was doing that, just say, yeah, you were. I just want to talk about it. Don't see that as an opening to dump everything else out, because they won't hear it. And then they will feel really, really attacked. And you don't want to do that. So it takes time, just like the friendship built up, it takes time to repair it. So tell them that, see where that goes. If it ends off great, make a plans to go out right away again, like for next week. So if things were going good, make plans right away. And if things were a little shaky and you left off with a good energy, still make plans right away, because that still tells their body and their minds that things are okay. It's still safe because you made plans, and you be the one to make the first move on the plans. And it tells them that they're safe, and you already set up to go bowling next week or whatever, so things are good. So that really will let it marinate in their heads that, okay, I may need to work this out, and they won't be thinking that they're awful people because you made plans with them for next week. So that gives a good basis of starting to rebuild a friendship. And I'm pretty sure that somebody will take that to heart, even if they may not have seen like it at the time. When they go home, they're going to digest that. And just when you talk to them again, act completely normal. The second time you go out, do not bring it up. Don't go, hey man, remember last week? Have you been working on that? Let it lie. If they start to exhibit those same behaviors as they were before, of judging or whatever they're doing, just simply say, hey man, what's going on? Just kind of nudge them a little bit. And when I say nudge them, it may be just by giving a look and not saying anything. I find that silence can be more effective in those situations than talking about it or pointing it out, especially if there's other people around. Like if you say, oh, guess what? I just got my this. And he's looking at, oh man, that's not, just look at him. Don't say anything, just be quiet and then go on bowling. They'll get it. You're reprogramming their brain. And that takes time, because the subconscious is a tricky thing. Once it's in there, it becomes habitual. First they start off, there might have been a mood, and then a temperament, and then it moves into, if they kept that long enough, a personality. So they got the personality of the judge, of the step parent, or any of the number of avatars that we talked about in part 1. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up and just tell you that it's going to take patience, and I think you'll have good results with that. And if they're worth it, they're worth the patience and time it's going to take to do this. And remember, it really is a marathon and not a sprint. And do it over a block of time, and you might have to repeat it with those gentle nudgings and helping them out. And then you also might have to pull away from them for a little while so they feel that there's something that they did that changed the mood of things. So if you pull back a little bit and give it time and just let life happen, they'll come back into your life, or you could call them later on and get back together. So with that, I'm going to leave you. And I hope this helped you out. And please like and subscribe, because we have much, much, much more content coming. And we're going to get into more chemical aspects of memory and how to change your personality. And I'm also going to give some tips of help that I've given to some of my clients, especially for entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs in particular, because I feel that they're really an underserved community. So stay tuned. But I didn't forget you fellas too. So anybody out there who's an entrepreneur, we got some stuff coming up for you for that. And then we're going to have some fun stuff coming up. Also, we're going to be in the studio with some amazing producers, Beyonce's producers, Lady Gaga's songwriter and producer. So that should be pretty fun. But anyway, this has been the resolution solution for toxic friends. And I hope you guys got something from it. I'll see you soon. Peace.